Hi, everyone, and happy Wednesday. I say happy Wednesday because every week it really is a joy for me to have a chance to connect with you all. Maybe because of this happiness, or even though I feel happy, I also feel the heaviness of what's going on in the world right now. And so I felt the need to start this week's offering in a little different way. And I would like to invite you to join me in this little practice. It could be something that you do for yourself at any point in time in your day. And there really doesn't need to be any special reason for you to do it. But I was feeling like if I'm struggling with what's going on in our world, and I know we're struggling collectively, then surely some of you out there are feeling the same way I am. And I thought we could start off with a moment to check in with ourselves as individuals and to reach out to each other as well as a collective. So if you feel comfortable, I would like for you to join me. Close your eyes, put your hands on your heart, and check in with yourself. Check in with your breath. In moments like this, I like to ask myself what I need right now. There usually is an answer that comes to me pretty quickly. And today, what I'm feeling is I need more love and compassion. So as I close my eyes and I offer myself love and compassion, I receive this gift with so much gratitude. And I offer myself this love and compassion first and foremost, because I know that I cannot give from an empty cup. Thank you. Thank you. Now I reach out one hand to you and I offer you the same. I keep one hand on my heart because I know it's important for me to care for myself if I want to be able to care for others. No matter how close or far we are from each other, I hope you'll always know you are not alone. Now I come back to myself and I remind myself that I am loved, that I am love, and I am not alone. I'm gonna offer myself a great big hug because I feel like I need it. And maybe you need one too. Thank you. It feels so good. So I want to take a moment also to thank you all so very much for showing up with me every week and for being so kind and supportive. I know it's not easy right now. And even though it's not easy right now to be kind and loving and compassionate, it's there in you. And every week you offer it to me, and it means so very much to me. So thank you very much for doing that. Sorry. Whew. I feel like giggling because I know, even though I'm sitting here in my studio, I'm not quite alone. Ged was right behind me. He loves to show up for me too. There's a lot of joy in what we offer each other here every week. And I feel so very thankful and grateful to you for that. So last week, at the very end of my video, I shared with you that I was finally ready to go live with my website. And I know it may seem strange that I shared this information at the end of my video instead of sharing it at the beginning of my video, but for some reason it felt very overwhelming for me to go live and announce it to so many people. So I decided to do the way I did and to announce it at the end of my video, because I knew for the most part that it would be received by fewer people, and that for me was an easier way to do it. It was the best way for me to honor how I was feeling and not to overwhelm myself. And so I said also that I would be taking some time this week to share with you a little bit more information about my website. I will, of course, include the link to my website in the video description below. But it's very simple. It's basically my name, Gabrielle Anna Cormier art.com. And on my website currently, I have a selection of the artwork I've created over the last few years, some of which, of course, I've created here on YouTube, and also a lot of artwork that I've created in my own personal time outside YouTube. And so I have posted this artwork for sale on my website, and I'm hoping that this will be a chance for me to share my art with the world in a different way, that it can potentially also help me continue what I'm doing here on YouTube, because it doesn't really pay all that much to be here on YouTube. I love what I do, and it pays me dividends in the fact that I love being here so much. And I do receive quite a bit, and I don't want to seem ungrateful, because I am completely and totally grateful for everything you offer me in terms of your support and your kindness. It really, really means a lot to me. And at the same time, like everyone else, I'm trying to make a living. So the website seemed like a next logical step. And it's also a step in the direction of me eventually being able to offer some classes online as well, where I go into more depth in everything I'm doing. Every week I create videos for you here, and I have to edit them down significantly in order to make it more feasible for me to upload them, because it would take quite a while for me to upload if my videos were forever long. Plus, it might not be something that most people would want to watch, you know, a 3-hour long video. Maybe not so much, right? But on my website, eventually what I hope to do is offer some more comprehensive classes where I can include more of the details of what I'm doing, include more of the explanations of what I'm doing, and cut them into different chapters that are more easy to digest in smaller amounts of time, so that you can actually take some of what I have shown you, go apply it to what it is you're creating at home, and then maybe move on to the next chapter. So that is my ultimate goal. I really want to be able to do that. Now, being that I'm an artist and also a trained counselor, I want to be able to continue using all of my skills and to present content that will be helpful to you, not only creatively, but maybe also on a well-being standpoint. So I want to say that I'm super excited about this new chapter. And I am super thankful for all the kind messages I've received so far about my website. I'm also super thankful that I have sold some paintings. That is so wonderful. It was a really wonderful surprise and gift for me to see that. I shipped off my first paintings yesterday, and I am so excited for the homes where my paintings are heading. Even though I'm excited about having launched my website and this new chapter in my life, I will tell you, up until the very last minute, I was still met with a lot of anxiety, because I am very much a perfectionist in recovery. Oh man, the struggle is real. I feel like, you know, this has been something that I have been challenged with for most of my life. And it continues to be a challenge. Even though I feel like I've made a lot of progress in this area, I still find myself at times almost being paralyzed and not wanting to move forward, because I'm so concerned that what I'm going to put forward is not good enough. So interestingly enough, when I was about to go live and I was feeling all of this anxiety regarding going live and what that might entail and all the unknown that I was being faced with, I was cleaning out my wallet because I needed to return something I had purchased specifically for getting ready to ship some paintings and whatnot. I bought something that I really didn't need because it was a little bit of overkill. So anyway, I was looking for that receipt. And as I was looking for this receipt, I found this little piece of paper in my wallet. And it's a fortune from a fortune cookie that when I get these little messages, and I find that I get these messages here and there in life, the ones that really speak to me, I tend to keep. And this one was so perfect for that specific moment, and it might be perfect for you right now. And basically how it reads is that it's better to do something imperfectly than to do nothing perfectly. Yes, so true, so true. And so I needed that. And that was the last little nudge that I needed to go live, and I went live, and it went really well. It didn't necessarily go without any hiccups, because, you know, when you're starting something new, there's bound to be some little challenges along the way. But all in all, it went better than I could have anticipated, and it could only have happened because I chose to move forward, to practice positive uncertainty, and to apply focused action. And that last part for me seems to be key. You know, it's all fine and dandy to say that I'm going to move forward into the unknown and try to do so with a positive attitude and a hopeful spirit. But if I don't apply focused action, it's less likely that I'm actually going to be successful with whatever it is I want to accomplish. So this week's painting is not an abstract. It's a bit of a landscape, and I'm including once again a figure. This time I'm going to be painting a wolf. I know it's a little bit more challenging to paint something that looks a little bit more real, but I would like for you to try and push yourself and see what it is you can accomplish. Because I've had people who contacted me after I painted the raven a couple of weeks ago, and at first they told me they didn't think they could do it, and then they sent me a picture of them having actually done it. And so they challenged themselves to try something new, to push beyond their perceived limits, and they surprised themselves with the ability to actually put something really beautiful out there. And so try it. Trust in yourself. And, you know, what's the worst that could happen? Right? We're not trying to save the world. We're not trying to build the most amazing rocket ship or whatever. We're painting. We're painting. And the best way for us to grow stronger creative muscles is to flex those muscles and to stretch those muscles and help them grow. So we need to challenge ourselves to do that. We can't get better at doing the things we are afraid of doing if we don't ever try them. So there we have it. All right, enough about all that. I am feeling very good, and I'm feeling very happy and hopeful and so thankful that you are here, and I hope you will enjoy this week's painting project. And even more so, I'll hope you'll feel like either joining me by relaxing and just watching me paint, or by picking up your paint supplies and painting along with me. Thank you so much for being here. I started my process by basically creating a sketch of a wolf, and then I transferred that sketch or some of the details from that sketch onto my piece of watercolor paper. If this is something you've never done, I'm going to include a video in the video description that I found here on YouTube that is really excellent at explaining how to do an image transfer. And it really does not have to be very complicated. I tend to prefer not including too many details. I might have gone a little bit overboard in the details I included here, but I think I still tried to keep it relatively simple. And I would encourage you to do the same when you're transferring images, because the more details we transfer or try to transfer, sometimes it just makes the whole process more complicated when it comes to painting. And that's the last thing we want to do. So behind my wolf, I am creating some circles, and these circles are going to be for the placement of my moon. I'm going to be using some relatively dark colors to paint the whole entire painting, and it's going to be mostly monochromatic, except that in the end I will also add some gold. But I wanted to focus on creating like a nighttime sort of landscape where my wolf is standing at the top of a mountain edge. oh, or at the top of a cliff's edge, and he's sitting or standing right in front of the moon. The first color I'm going to add in my painting is a color I'm actually mixing, and I'm mixing it using the apple red in this little paint palette, along with a little bit of blackberry and blueberry. And I'm using a lot of water so that the paint I'm adding will be much less pigmented.
With watercolors, I generally find that it's easiest to start with lightest colors or lightest values of color and then slowly but surely build up, as it's easier to build up the color intensity than it is to go back to lighter colors without either adding gouache or gesso or something else. And so I started with my lightest value, and you'll also notice that I didn't paint the center of my moon because I want to, for the time being anyway, I want to keep that relatively bright. I also want the circle that's around my moon to stay relatively light because the moon, when you're looking at it in the sky, sort of looks like it's radiating light away from it. And so it wouldn't be just a very stark, dark cutout. You actually see that light emanating from the moon, light that's actually reflected from the sun. And so that's why I'm keeping that ring next to the circle for my moon relatively light. And so I'm going to keep working on building up these layers of colors as I go along. As I mentioned previously, I'm going to be working mostly monochromatically, which means that I'm working with blue in this instance. I'm going to be working with blackberry. That's the blue that I'm using in this palette. And I'm also going to be using eventually a little bit of blueberry, which is another blue in this palette. And at the time being, I am working on building up these layers of color lightly. And as I go along, I will surely, slowly but surely intensify the colors. From this palette in particular, I find that mixing blackberry with the apple red is a very easy way to create a gray. And so I'm doing just that right now. I'm mixing a little bit of blackberry, a little bit of red, and lots of water, and I'm creating a gray, a more proper gray that I'm going to be dropping into the center of my moon. I've ahead of time added some water to the surface of my moon. And once I'm done mixing my color, I'm going to come in and drop little areas of this gray that I'm creating into little sections of the moon. What I'm trying to do, of course, is I'm trying to basically create the look of a cratered moon, which most moons are cratered, or at least the one that we look at into the sky. And that's why we can see that it doesn't look just completely white. Instead of using fine grained table salt, I'm going to be dropping in some coarse salt into my moon. I find that the effects this creates does remind me a little bit of what could be considered little craters. And so I think it's the perfect application for this coarse salt with my watercolors. After adding the salt, I come in with a little bit more of that darker wash of gray, and I'm dropping little bits of that color, little droplets of gray into the coarse salt, and that is going to help create those little craters that I was talking about. I suppose being that the moon is more neutral and gray than blue, I've stepped slightly away from the fact that I wanted to create a monochromatic piece. But it's not a really far stretch because that blue that I'm using everywhere else in the painting is included to create that wash of gray. And so it's one way to add a neutral in your painting with the colors that you're already using so that you're not stepping too far away from what it is you're trying to create. Hopefully that makes sense. Now I'm going to work on developing a little bit more of my landscape at the horizon line. And I'm continuing to work with light washes of color, slowly but surely adding more pigment as I go along. Normally, I would probably start working on landscape features using my ink before attempting to work on a figure. But having sketched this wolf in the first place, I'm feeling like I had a chance to practice my hand at working on the wolf. And so I'm feeling very ready to start adding some more details to my wolf. The first thing I'm doing is just basically coming in with my fountain pen and I'm adding some details where I know these areas are going to be some of the darkest values in my painting. One of the reasons I prefer to do a sketch of my subject on a different piece of paper rather than just doing it directly on the watercolor paper is that this allows me the chance to use an eraser. I could do that with the watercolor paper, but if you've ever tried doing that directly on watercolor paper and you're not feeling 100% sure of yourself, you might find yourself using your eraser a lot, and this could potentially mark your paper. And so for me, it's just easier to do a sketch on another piece of paper, work out whatever details I want to work out there, and then transfer it than it is to draw it directly on the piece of paper, especially if I am doing something like this for the first time. The transfer itself, again, doesn't have to be a whole lot of details. It's surprising, really, just how much you can build muscle, like creative muscle memory from even the simple fact of tracing a subject. You start to learn how to move your pens, how to move your pencil in the way that the lines present themselves on the paper that's underneath. And so you can still learn a lot. I would suggest that it's important to also practice your sketching skills separate from just tracing subjects. But if you're brand new to creating and you don't feel very comfortable with your sketching skills, there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. And in fact, it can be so helpful in starting to develop those creative muscles. In the absence of direct bright light, such as in a night scene, our eyes tend to see mostly values. So we will be able to distinguish dark values and light values, but we don't tend to see a lot of color. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to create this little landscape with a wolf in a monochromatic scheme. It feels more fitting to do it that way than to add a lot of color because my eyes or our eyes don't tend to see a lot of color when we're looking at something in the nighttime. Even with a full bright moon that offers us quite a bit of light, we still tend to not see colors all that well. Like us, wolves are very social creatures and they tend to travel in packs. But once they mature and reach a certain point of maturity in their life, they also tend to venture out on themselves, and this is where the concept of the lone wolf comes from. They venture out this way because it is a survival instinct for them. It's the instinct to set out to find a mate so that they can create their own pack. And though I am a very social creature myself, I am also an introvert, and I can very much identify with the need to sort of venture out and do things on my own every once in a while. The concept of the lone wolf, similar to the concept of introversion, tends to carry a negative connotation in our society that very much values extroversion. But I'm hoping with this little conversation that I can help to bring some light to what it actually means to be an introvert. Rather than being an antisocial person, an introvert is simply meaning to find ways to recharge their energy. And for an introvert, that is something that is much more easily done when they are by themselves. As opposed to introverts, extroverts recharge their own batteries by being with other people. In some ways, they get their energy from other people. And so it's very important for them to be with others in order to feel like they are getting what they need to recharge their energy levels. So there is no right or wrong way to be. It is just a natural preference that we all have to either be introverted or to be extroverted. And I guess understanding this can go a long way in helping us understand the people we have relationships with. There's a really excellent book on this topic, and that book is called Quiet, and it's a book by Susan Cain. And if you have a spouse or a grandchild or a child or a friend who identifies with being introverted, or if maybe yourself identifies with being introverted, it's a really great book to help us understand that way of being. And it's also very validating for introverts because it helps us to get insight on the fact that even though we're not always wanting to be out there and be the life of the party, we do matter as well, and we contribute a lot to society. I also felt inspired to paint a wolf because the wolf as an animal also carries a lot of symbolism. Known for being fiercely loyal to their mates and having very strong family ties, they are a symbol of loyalty. They are also a symbol of leadership and they represent the spirit of nature and resourcefulness. All really admirable qualities. It also seemed fitting to me that my wolf would be painted in front of a moon because the moon itself is a symbol of intuition and introspection. And introverts and maybe lone wolves are very good with introspection. that I'm finally moving on to working on creating more details in my wolf, I have pulled out my finest tip brushes. And the first one I'm working with here is a micro mini brush. And I'm going to slowly but surely build my layers of color much in the same way that I did to build the colors in my background. And that is that I am going to start with my lightest shades of value, and I'm slowly but surely going to intensify my values and make them deeper. I used an image of a wolf in order for me to create my sketch of a wolf. And as I'm moving along and painting my wolf, it's also important for me to refer back to that initial image, because this image is also going to share information with me about my different values that are in the image. And this helps to guide me in leaving some areas a little bit lighter and darkening other areas. Now, if I were truly trying to reflect the reality of this scenario, being that my wolf is standing in front of a big bright moon, he would probably be backlit and not so visible. You would probably only see the silhouette of the wolf more than anything else. It would be different, of course, if he was facing the moon, but in this case, I thought the composition would be more interesting if the moon was behind my wolf. I wanted to challenge myself to paint a wolf in a more realistic manner and not just simply create a silhouette of the wolf in front of the moon, because I want to, again, stretch my muscles, my creative muscles, and I want to push myself to paint different things so that I can grow my creative skills. And in artistic representation, I guess the sky is the limit. If I was going for complete reality, it would look different than it's going to look in my painting. But I am giving myself the artistic liberty and freedom to create my wolf in the way that I want to create him. After adding this lightest shade of color, I'm going to let my wolf completely dry before I start to add any more colors. And so I'm going to start working on other areas of the painting. I want to add some darker values in both my sky and in my landscape. For the second layer of color on my wolf, I've created a wash of my blackberry color, which is probably my darkest value in this palette. And I'm gonna slowly but surely start building up this color into my figure. And initially, I'm working with a wash because I want to keep the colors again relatively light at this point, so that eventually I can add more pigment and start to darken some areas more so than others. And when you're working with value like this, it helps because it also will help to create dimension in your figure rather than leaving it looking more flat. After letting my last layer of color dry, I am now going to come in with a wash of lighter gray or just to sort of glaze certain areas of the figure that I would like to darken, but only slightly. Now I'm going to move on to creating a little bit more pen work. And I'll start first by creating some stippling with my Catalola pen. And this is not something I've mentioned before, but it was something that one of our friends from our community drew attention to me, and I thought it would be important for me to mention this. And I think it's important to mention this not only for the dotting pen in particular, but for all art supplies, that it's important for us to be very mindful of the products we create with. So the reason I bring this up as I'm playing with the Catalola pen is that for people who have a cardiac pacemaker, this pen is not a good pen to use. I don't really understand the mechanics of why that is. I think there might be a magnet or something in the little motor that makes the pen do the dots that could interfere with a pacemaker, but I'm not the manufacturer of this pen and I don't understand that all that well. And unfortunately, Amazon does not put this information in their product description. So I thought it would be important for me to mention it here. I guess it's important for me to mention it now because I also want this to be an overall word of caution for any of the art supplies that you use. This art supply in particular could have issues, could cause issues for people with pacemakers. Other art supplies might create issues for people with allergies. Art supplies, even though they are fun to play with, are not necessarily always created in ways that could be beneficial to us. So it's very important for us as consumers and responsible consumers for us to be mindful of our own health and our own situation and to do the research we need to do before we go ahead and buy a certain product. Please be mindful that I don't necessarily have the same health concerns that you may have for your own self. And so, again, please be responsible and do some research on the products you're about to purchase. Now, thankfully, Amazon has a really great return policy, and in order, if you needed to return a product like this one that you had bought because you figured out that you cannot use it, they are usually very, very good about letting you return the product and getting your money back or getting an exchange for something else. And though I'd love to be able to be that person who shares all of this information with you all the time, it would be very difficult for me to, I guess, be responsible for that because, again, I don't know all of the different things that each and every person who is watching this channel is dealing with. And so I do implore you to take your own health into your own hands and to make sure that before you make a purchase, that the purchase you're about to make will actually work for you. When it came to deciding whether or not I was going to add iridescent paint, for me, of course, it's never a question of if. It's often a question of when and which. And so I contemplated the idea of adding some blue iridescent paint, which I think would have looked really pretty in this painting as well. But I opted to go with a light gold. Um, I'll name the gold is specifically in my video description, of course. And the reason I decided to go with gold is because it is a complementary color to blue, and I think it will work really well in this painting to sort of warm things up to a certain extent and also add more visual interest to the painting. Once I'm done adding some gold around my moon, I'll also add some dots of gold in my landscape in order to unify the composition a little bit better. And then finally, the last thing I'll do in the painting before calling it done is add some more lines. I created some vertical lines in my landscape in the mountain range that was set furthest away. And I always like to repeat certain elements in a painting because I feel that this makes the painting more cohesive. And so I love to repeat elements, even if I don't always repeat them in exactly the same way. So in this case, the lines will be horizontal when we're looking at the painting in its portrait mode. I really enjoyed working on this painting of my lone wolf. And being that I was by myself with my little pack, just the two of us, Gedu and I, this weekend, it gave me an opportunity to also contemplate what it means for me to be an introvert and how it's important for me to make that time for myself to rest and recharge. As we each continue to journey the unknown of the world we live in, I hope we can all remember to make time to check in with ourselves and to offer ourselves what it is we feel we need so that we are more capable of offering our brothers and sisters around the world what they may need to. Thank you again for making the time to join me on my creative journey. Please remember to be kind and compassionate with yourselves and offer yourself some time for some happy creating.